Well, hello there, everybody. How y'all doing on this Monday? And I mean, it's a cold one here where I'm at. Yeah, it's a little chilly, but hey, it's supposed to be. It's winter time. But welcome everybody as I turn off Spirit. I love that album. Yeah, that's one that's always a good one. There we go. Let's see. Is it saying that we're live? It says we're live. I feel alive. I hope you feel alive. And as I get everything going here, and I get that there, so hey, y'all know the routine. Yeah. Did you have a good weekend? Hope you did. Last Monday of the year today. And what a year it has been. Don't know about you, but it went by like that. But yet, when I stop and think about everything that did happen, like, wow. But anyway, so this is kind of like a holiday week here in this region of the planet. Not much happening, and I can dig that. You know, sleep in late, stay up late. Oh, I already do that. No, necessarily. But hope you're having fun. I think 2026 is going to be interesting. We'll be talking about that tomorrow with the ladies, and going to see if Mike and Cindy want to come on Thursday. Might just do a New Year's Day show. What's going to happen in 26? Don't know. I got some senses, but I think it's going to be one year that, yeah, we'll remember. But anyway, so how is everybody in the chat room? Let me just see. Hello, Elderberry. Hello, Lauren. How are you? Good to see you. As I get Rick. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. DC. Joyce saw that. Hey, I'm going to play some games. I hope they're fun games. That's what gods do. We play games. Hmm, Depending if you think you're a god or not, but yeah. Let's see. Felix, good to see you. Emperor Rex, welcome. So I look over on the big screen and say, okay, yeah, it's know thyself. How are you? Good to see you as well. But I saw Gilbert. How you doing, brother? A little cold there in Denver, isn't it? Yeah. I think we didn't break we did a break an all-time record high yesterday, got up to like 78. But I think we almost missed it by 1 degree or something. A 60 plus degree change in weather in less than 24 hours. That'll jack with you. Okay, what anyone says. It's just yeah. So how else? How are y'all spending your time? Having fun? It's Prosperity Monday. Yeah. If you believe in prosperity. Hey, I want to kind of bring something here. Let me just bring this out, kind of just to show you how sometimes just a picture can help change our perspective. So, I speak favor over us every time we get here, nothing missing, nothing broken, be kind to your mind. But I always find this is interesting. So this is a star. It's one of the largest they say they have found, which kind of gives you a scale. But if you can see all the way right in here, this tiny little dot, that's our solar system. And this is one big ass star. That's all I can say. I can see Jenny is coming on. Good to see you, Jenny. So, yeah, you know, just remember that no matter what you believe, what we seek, knowledge is sometimes incomprehensible when you look at the scale and the scope of things. And this is just like one star. Can you imagine what it would be like, for you to go around that planet for 1 year? You'd be like 1 billion years old, you know. So how old are you? I'm only 2 billion. Huh? You're a youngster. So anyway, be that as though it may, it always helps to see things in a little different perspective. All right, so we're going to be studying about John Dee and, of course, his good friend, Mr. Kelly, as well, because those two individuals, well, they were highly controversial in their day. They have been controversial since their day. Um, and depending on which side of the line you may be on, or if you're just walking the middle of the fence, it's interesting. A lot of debate as to were they authentic? Did they really do what they say they did? Their books, are they actually the writings of it, or is this someone that merely used their name? Um, lot to think about where these two cats are concerned. And hey, Jenny, I see you there.
Hey, you're
How are
lovely.
you? Hope you've had a great Saturnalia, Christmas Day, whatever you celebrate
Yeah,
there.
well, we just did the day we do. We ate, watched movies. It was nice. It was nice,
Good.
but trying to get away more with the kids away from the corporate Christmas, you know.
Mhm.
It's hard in this climate, in this reality, but it is ridiculous. I'm sick of um breaking my back to give some bloke some kudos that he never even earned, and the children haven't finally find out that that's a big magic trick. So of the corporate world. So yeah, we're doing that and we did it really successfully this year. I think the kids had a good time still.
I think that's great. Great. Because the thing about Santa Claus, Colleen, you brought this out in an email that she had sent me. So Santa Claus really is the Satan Claus.
Too right.
It
He
is.
wanted too much overtime.
If you understand magic, every magician will tell you that how they keep it hidden is that you rearrange the alphabet. You arrange a name, a letter, and Santa is Satan.
Hmm.
Now, the thing about it is, and Jenny, I'm glad you're with me because we're really going to get into a discussion about D and Kelly, because Kelly was really, from what I've studied of history of the two of them, it seems like Kelly was the one who really was into talking to the angels. His desire was to communicate. Subsequently, because of both Dee and Kelly, we have the angelic alphabet we're going to be talking about. Um, and back in his day, he was a very controversial figure. He was with the Queen's court, which made it something that the Catholic Church, the church, really hated England about. The fact that they were
Hmm.
allowing these two characters, particularly Dee, to go around with the royalty and introduce them to a completely different paradigm
Yeah.
that you could actually talk to angels, but they're not the angels that the ignorant people are. And I'll just be very candid. John Dee would consider every one of us here ignorant. Because if
Yeah.
you don't understand the mathematics and the complexity of what it takes to be a true magician, he would tell you that I have neither the time nor the desire to spend to you because you're basically a very ignorant person and you wouldn't comprehend it. And I got to be candid with you, by reading his books, I feel very ignorant. What
Well, the
say
guy
you?
Well, the guy was working in an alchemical way within an nth degree of temperature, to create the lead to gold experiment, the things like that. He was creating um, neuroetherical mapways that, as I see them, both in astrological terms, calculative terms, mathematical terms, and not in maths as we know it from school today. Um, uh, from a day to a time to a color of clothing. So Dee's work is layered every time, no matter what ritual he's doing, it's layered and it's so multi-layered that it is hard to keep up with. But in order for the success rate to be as it was deemed to be, it had to be so accurate. So yeah, you're right. You know, everybody's a neophyte, and sometimes I think that might have been a blessing to him, and sometimes I think it was a curse to him, like most masters.
Yeah, and to be able to teach us, and I wanted to bring this up because we're going to be looking at a couple of different books. This one is, give me one second as I move that out of my way. Thank you. This is it's basically the first five books of D, and this is an academic's review of this work, and I just wanted to bring this out. Um, and in fact, Agrippa said this. He said, the doctrines of mathematics are so necessary to and have such an affinity with magic that they excuse me, that do profess it without them are quite out of the way and labor in vain and in shall no wise obtain their desired effect. And what we're talking about, as you can see, I have a lot. I just want to bring you into so this is the alphabet that was revealed both to John Dee and to Kelly, Edward Kelly. And you have to understand this complex formula, Jenny, as to this angel that they were in communication with. And this angel, well, it's unlike any other angel I've studied. And it also needs to be understood that I would say that Dee and Kelly were as much tied to Christianity as any person of their era or even today. They strongly believed in the Bible. They used the Latin Vulgate. They did not use because the King James was not in existence
Exactly.
then.
Yeah,
And so they have a different perception of what we see God as today as to what they saw God.
absolutely. Away from the Bible that we see today, this is where coded language comes into it a lot, but also the preservation of true history rather than allowing people to vault it away from the masses, and put out a more inferior thing, because that's the Bible that we have today. The Bible that he was working from was much more
It was
coded
actually the original Bible. They were using the Latin
itself.
Vulgate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in itself, it's coded. Latin is coded much, much
Yes.
more than
Yes.
the amalgamation that English is. So even the just reading the words in Latin, this is why the pharmaceutical world still uses Latin
Yes, they
because it
do.
gives a much broader scope to code the many different elements that go into one tablet, let's say. So you'll have those Latin words, and it
Can I
seems very
inject something on
important.
this? And you said on pharmaceutical, if you
Yes.
read a lot of these names, folks, these names are occult names. They're spells.
Yeah,
That's no
absolutely.
bullshit. I'm just simply telling you straight up. And by the way, this was the Archangel Raphael who was apparently in contact with Dee and Kelly on this. But in
Yeah,
any case, getting back to the Latin, and in fact, there is a conversation that I can show you in the beginning of this book. This is the Book of Enoch, the angelic alphabet.
yeah,
Where is it? It's here. So to think that this is actually a verbatim, apparently one, I think Kelly was the one who was writing this down, that this is one of their sessions with this angel. I think this is Liber 3 and 4. And I have to tell you, Jenny, I feel like a neophyte on this one because, when I look at these conversations and then I look at these complex forms, I understand now the structure of the language, of how it was. But it's highly complex, and I'll just be candid with everyone here as well. I'm not disciplined enough to do their type of magic. I'm just not.
No, and it's hard to. It's hard to today, in that, yes, it was hard when they had their obstacles in their day, but time wasn't an obstacle to them. And the ability to uh, concentrate on their field and their field only was available to them. And that's an important part of this, that they had the time, to, you're quite right, to be
Oh,
dedicated to it. They lived it
they lived
daily.
it. Yeah, they actually really did. In this, what you're reading here, folks, what you're seeing. So this was from a seance section. I don't know if it's seance is the right word. I would find it more of a channeling session than anything else.
Yeah.
But I love the fact when I started reading this, I just kind of get into meditation and try to just put my mind. I can't comprehend either Dee's mind or Kelly's because these cats were. I think if there is such a thing as actual magic, then these two are definitely top candidates. But
Wizards, yeah,
yes,
wizards
yes,
for sure.
yes. So this was April 28th in the year 1582. So I love this. I bet you I don't know if it was in the morning or the evening, but we do know this, that apparently, I think it was Archangel Michael appeared. You can see the conversation. It is written in, I guess it would be the Queen's language, the Queen's English.
Old
And
England.
you can read it, even the first one. Only Michael appeared, and to diverse my complaints and requests said, yeah. So you just have to translate in your mind. The Lord shall consider thee in this world and in the world to come. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, Jenny, with you on here, because I'm going to be switching back and forth, because in the study of John Dee and Edward Kelly and what they were bringing, it is, the dichotomy is brought into view into the discussion as to, was Kelly and Dee evil? Were they actually Satanist? As I said last week, if a person is a practicing Satan worshiper, they're a Christian. It's the same setup. You're
Yeah.
worshiping the same God. And in this biography of Satan, which we'll get into, continue as we get into the study, you're going to find out that up until recently, the God of the Old Testament, and this is the God of the Muslims, the gods of the Jews, that God is both good and evil. It is both the Lord God, the holy God. It's also the Lord of hell, the Lord of that rules hell. It's one, and it's in the book of Isaiah. It says, "I created evil for my own pleasure." So
Yeah.
we have two distinct thoughts here going. So I'd like to get from your perspective, what would you say that John Dee, would he be considered a Satanist, a Luciferian in modern day, or was he back in his day, was he considered a Christian? I believe the answer was he was considered a Christian.
He was considered a Christian, but I don't know. I go back and forth when I go into spirit with this, in that that we only know that from the depictions we've been given today, and I know them to be distorted at best. So I often feel him as a mystic, as somebody so driven for this purpose of endeavoring to explore and find out the etherical, the unseen, and bring it in a bridge with the physical. That this is a person who found himself in a candy shop of time, of wealth, of ability to prove his magic, prove it, because he was given a role that literally that's all he had to do. That's all they wanted him to do. They wanted him to predict. They wanted him to be involved in a way that actually was copacetic with his drive to find the unseen and find what was out there that could be drawn to here. Um, so I know the excitement of that feeling when I feel that in spirit. I know how you could find yourself like in a metaphoric way of taking a dream job, but with a corporation that you don't like even sometimes, because he didn't find favor in the royal family from everybody
Oh, no,
um,
no, no.
with his
In fact, he
practices.
was
It wasn't the most comfortable
quite
place for him. Yeah,
quite
so he
hated
was,
is a word.
yeah, at minimum, and so he was so driven that he could even put up with that type of workplace in order to uh, follow this passion, this purpose, this drive. So, but as far as evil and good go, I think we've really, when we're looking at this and dissecting things like this, it's important to be very careful before you lay your hat on either side of the extreme of that, because this person I feel had true intent to just discover and uncover maybe what it was used for with the British Empire after that. Even him, he brought up the word Britannia. That could be deemed very evil now as to everything that's been done under that name to the rest of the world. But he
But
deemed
that
it
wasn't his
Britannia.
world.
No, no, but
No.
that was the magic. So his magic was strong, but it was used by others. So I believe in my feeling, my predominant feeling is that he was so driven to the cause of uncovering the unseen that he would have put himself in any structure of means to an end to be able to do that. I
True.
don't feel he was evil.
No, and in fact, in his own penmanship, you can read in his notes, he firmly believed that he was being used by the hand of God,
Mhm.
and that he was at the same level of Enoch, and Elijah. He believed that as the angel spoke to him in bringing this lost knowledge, that he was told that he would be an integral part in bringing the knowledge of which would be basically come to light at the end of days. He knew that what he was doing was for the apocalypse. He saw that it wasn't that far into the future. And so when you read his text, his books, is that it says right here, contains prophecy, an interpretation of which will restore human knowledge to the state from which it had fallen over the course of human history. So that was really his motivation.
His purpose, yeah,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
uncover and discover and remember. I wrote down, what was it? Remember, um, reactivate, render of the ancient knowledge coming back to life. That was a purpose of his that came to me as I was sort of uh, meditating on this that we were going to do.
Cool.
And the other thing that came was many masters of magic throughout generations are then demonized after the fact. And usually that's because of an endeavor to covet the knowledge,
Well, that's why
in
it's
order
written in code.
in code, and that was done by he was actually known to be the reason he was so persecuted through the royal family was because of his openness. That Mary loved or Elizabeth loved one or the other, and the other didn't. But that openness was actually because I fully expect that he expected everybody to be as excited as he, rather than, put off by the way that they got there to that knowledge. But his openness to the whole ritual that would get him there was very much there. It was only after persecution that he had to go underground, through the Rosicrucian route, which a lot of societies had been formed by that very same way. They're used and utilized for their wisdom, but then they're forced underground to create coded language. That I mean, he's the original 007. That's what
Mhm.
that's his code. He signed himself off as 007 for the Queen. That's where that comes from. So even his work for the outside world of spycraft was very much coded, so that
Yeah. Well, and also to add to that, and then particularly in this case where we're talking, this is actually, I believe, his first book, which relates to the revelation of the what he called the angelic book. It was written up by Kelly, and it is a series of prophetic calls known as the 48 Clauses of the Angelica. So, and when I read this and started re getting into it back, because we talked about Kelly about 8, 9, yeah, I guess 7 years ago, a whole different perspective now, because again, I'll show you the tables that he put together. And it's called basically the Logos of knowledge. Um, and this angel that came to him, Raphael, was the one that began to show him how each one of these, I don't know if they're laws, they're rules, but it's all part of it. What I can only say is a very complex um, system. And if the next life is representative by, if you believe that Kelly and Dee were actually communicating with this archangel, then it shows me that there is a realm and a reality of where this exists and the complexity of it. I don't know. I guess that's where you can almost get reincarnation. 'Cause I don't think the basic human mind that has no understanding of what these men were doing, I don't think they could enter into that, Jenny. I don't see how they could.
no, I mean, to the scope of what they were doing, I often have knowings intuitively of, there's lots to do about the royal family line and how they marry with inside the family as much as possible. But actually, above that and beyond that, during this time of the real rooting of power of the royal family that we see today, was this time. And a lot of that I think was that's the surface that we see the headlines of. There's actually a lot of magic ritual that has gone on there, I think, to solidify the DNA lines in order to meet in a certain, because when you look at these charts and how he helped root that royal family into a powerful space because of his work there, I can very much see how there's layers and graphs and charts just to draw that family line in order to keep it going.
Well,
Um, that was his job.
could I add into that aspect also, and as if you remember in your chronology of events, so when D was preceded with James, King James,
Yeah.
and I often found it interesting. Did, for instance, Bacon, Francis Bacon, did he know Dee? Did he get any of Dee's works or Kelly's? Obviously, the royal court was heavily influenced, at least for a period of time. Even the opponents of Dee, with his access to the queen as chief spiritualist, tells me that in the king's or queen's courts, when they brought the Latin Vulgate in and they began to decipher it and rewrite the King James Bible. My point is, I was questioning in my notes, how much did Dee's and Kelly's influence go into the writing of the King James Bible?
Yeah. I think
I
a
bet
lot
a
of
lot
the
of it did.
yeah, I think a lot of the influence of their work, I just don't know that Dee would have signed off on the
I don't
King
know. No,
James
I'm not saying that
Bible.
Dee would have signed off. What I am saying
Nearly
that
all of
those
his work.
witnesses in Elizabeth's court,
Yeah.
they're the same group, because if you look in the time frame when James came in, I think that in fact they started the King James Project. What was that? Right around 1595 or something, well within Dee's time, right before he
Yes.
passed on. I'm not saying he was part of it, but what I'm saying is that those scribes who listened to Dee and his works and knew him at that time took that knowledge into the interpretation of the rewriting of the Bible.
Absolutely. They've
That's what
got
I'm
to.
saying.
And I mean, there's at least one or two like date marks that are questionable date marks at best, but of where there's a visitation between D and Bacon, that
Yeah, I
overlap.
see. I have no doubt, and I am convinced it is, in fact, I think Shakespeare was Bacon, but I'm also
Yeah.
convinced that Francis Bacon was actually the one. He had the manuscript for a year. After the king's scribes had finished the King James Bible, it was Bacon who held it for a year to do a proofread.
Yeah.
I'm going, hmm, okay, sure. There's no connection here at all. No. It's like,
Yeah.
mm. All right. So getting back to this, I wanted to get back into because this is going to help us as we go forward in this study. So the Liber Logaeth, when the Logaeth is Latin for logos, which is the word of God or the illuminated uh, knowledge. So according to the Archangel Raphael, he gave D 49 leaves, each folio, which contained a table or grid of 49 times 49 cells. The diaries in Sloane's manuscript 3188 describes and records the contents of the first leaf, two folios, a total of 2 times 49 times 49, which equals 4,802 cells. Here, each cell was to be filled with a number of letters, usually representing a word, although in some cases a cell could contain two words or a word may be spread across several cells. That alone is a complicated, I mean, you're getting into freaking calculus right now if
I
you're
wonder where Excel comes from, don't you?
exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, did you come across this yourself? In fact,
Yeah, I think
Jenny,
you
in
did,
fact,
Billy
Excel
Bob.
would be.
Mm-hmm. You good
Um,
old beef you.
Then it goes in the diaries. However, the lines are simply written out at large as they were dictated. The pattern changes in the last lines of the second folio. These have only one letter per cell and are laid out in a grid in a manuscript that has not drawn that was which has not been drawn into a grid. So to complete this, the first leaf is far from perfect in its structure. For each folio, 12 of the 49 lines contain more or fewer than 49 words. The shortest has 35, the longest 59. Leaves 2 through 48, because leaf 49 was never revealed to D, are written in table form, which with one letter per cell, like the final lines of the first leaf. All of the material is written in the Roman rather than the angelic alphabet, despite repeated admonitions from the angels to learn those holy letters in memory. Neither Dee nor Kelly seems to have been willing to do so, let alone to undertake the laborious task of transcription. Wow.
Again, I think that's more of them having to be very careful to separate, have layers of separation between just anybody being able to replicate this kind of thing. It was being used to create storms, which people do today. And again, it's working in groups and it's dedication and time more than anything to create storms. But that's how he actually professed a year before the Spanish War that this is how he was going to stop it to the Queen by bringing a storm over the seven hills or something, or seven mountains. And again, that's how that Spanish War was stopped. But philosophers have said, a lot of philosophers who've done storm calling that way as an experiment have called it more of a this would be like Draco type energy also, of the way that it was utilized, this type of magic. So you wonder if that's an add-on too, that they were coding it to protect from that sometimes as well, from that aspect of infiltration rather than just humans even.
Yeah, and Kelly, was quoted as saying as well is that this what they were being taught is just a knowledge that we have lost. And he pointed out, in fact, what we call today the modern Kabbalah is not the Kabbalah that these cats were referencing. I would love to have seen what it was they were actually referencing. And when you get into Enoch, so Enoch is a character that we are only introduced in the book of Genesis. Was the first human who didn't actually experience death. So apparently there was a transmutation of some form, but it was Enoch who came back with the angels to give this prophetic word from God about how things started, what things are going to happen. So you got Enoch and then you got Elijah. And so here you got Dee and Kelly apparently working with the same angel that was involved with Enoch. That's pretty powerful.
Our cycles repeat.
Yes, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Um, so and quite frankly, I'm I have the understanding now that if I was living in what would have been considered the late um, 16th century, you only had kind of two choices. The Martin Luther had already done his revolt, so the Protestants were well entrenched in Europe, which was in direct opposition to the Holy See, which was the Roman Empire, the
Yeah.
Vatican. And then you have this queen who comes up, and she had to have some sort of brilliant enlightenment for her to even begin to entertain such an individual as Dee. And I found it interesting in coincidences that here you have the monarchy who is saying, all right, there is something more than what the Roman Church is telling us. And she brings in what would be considered today modern occultist, a wizard, a witch, however you want to translate it. And what he brought in was a knowledge that was A, hidden. So that means he was obviously being taught something that other humans did not have. And what he brought, as you pointed out, was some pretty power. You could only say it was supernatural.
Yeah. Multi-layered supernatural as
Yeah,
well.
seriously. I
And
mean,
he
and
needed the
it's in
access to get into the buildings alone that this royal family had taken over was a huge part of him being able to uncover a lot of these truths, because a lot of the truths were in the paintings that were on the walls. And I don't mean paintings in frames, I mean paintings on the walls, of bathhouses and things like that. There was coding in all of that. We know that there's mathematics in it that corresponds. And so even just getting in the buildings themselves, the libraries themselves, was an important part of him, like
and very few were only allowed access to the libraries back in then.
very few.
In fact, the common folk found mathematics to be witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were told to believe that. They were
Well,
told that.
in France, they actually, it's like, oh, you
Off
know
with the
math,
head.
do you? Uh-huh. It's like,
Yeah.
we'll take care of that. I just wanted to show in the reference notes here that it said that Dee preferred to read scriptures in Latin. He did not own an English Bible, and when he cites scripture in English, the translation is his own. Now that's very interesting that he did not take the scribes in the courts or of the Vatican. No, he went ahead and did the laborious work of his own. I found that interesting. And I
Because
don't
he couldn't
speak.
he couldn't trust the translation. His translations had to be so precise, like
Yeah.
within the difference of success of an experiment or a ritual, or however, it's very blurred lines. was dependent on literally the a nano of something being off or in alignment. So, there's no way he was going to. And you've got to think at this time as well, the English language was more Germanic still. I mean,
Yeah.
and the Germanic language is very small. It's very complex and very small and doesn't make sense in a way that if Italy, Spain, France, you can pretty much, if you're Italian or Spanish, you can go to France and get along pretty well, and vice versa for all of them, because a lot of the words are very similar.
The
So that you could,
dialects kind of
it,
have reference.
yeah, yeah. And so, but with English, especially English of Dee's time, it was very heavily Germanic. And it stayed that way. We haven't got too many other influences from elsewhere to add into it, so that it can't, the Bible actually can't actually be translated into English and keep enough of its accuracy, even if it hadn't been distorted, and keep enough of its accuracy from the Latin to
Well,
the
it's
Anglo.
my position, and I'm not alone in this, is that what everyone uses today as their King James version or translations thereof, that's a false Bible. It's
If
not
absolutely
the
false.
Bible. It is a
Yeah,
false Bible.
yeah, it's paper to get the fire going at best. There's no,
Yeah.
if it's a ritual fire, maybe not even that, but you know, it's that's all it is. It's not because it can't be translated accurately, and certainly can't be translated within that margin of error accurately enough, even for it to do justice to the older biblical
And now we're
stories.
getting to the core of the discussion here because in that discussion of so which Bible is Dee and Kelly referencing when they're talking with the Archangel Raphael, Raphael is talking about a different reality, a different whole scene of a hierarchy that we do not get out of what is the modern Bible. Now, having said that, it's interesting that it is quite apparent that they were, in fact, in physical contacts with some unseen entity. It calls itself Raphael. It brings them into, in connection with Enoch. And then they bring in this language, this angelic language. If you've ever seen um, oh, the prophecy. It's and they made three movies out of it, Legions. It's about a detective in LA anyway. He meets the true fallen angel. And these angels aren't what we've been taught. They're nothing to be messed with, number one, but they have their own language, their own alphabet. They understand complex mathematics, and they seem to have the ability to see time and this knowledge that they said. So it's again the logoth is what was D wrote, and that simply translates as logos. So uh, it's some amazing stuff. In fact, in this section here, I think it was on April 6th, 1583. So we have actual dates here. Jenny, this is what I love is that this is not supposition, subjugation as to what may have been or what. It's not like in the Bible where you have no idea that you celebrate someone's birth that never was born on that date, but somehow it becomes reality. And then again,
Also
we really
called
don't
that.
know. Yeah, it's like it could be, but here we have the actual penmanship of these gentlemen, and we know it was on April 6th, 1583, was probably what is April like in England? I guess it is, can it be cloudy and cold still?
It's spring showers, so it's usually quite bright and light, but showery,
Okay. I love that because that gives me the
droplet
setting.
level
So I can
showers.
see him and
You can
Kelly are
smell
sitting
the
back.
rain. It's definitely a time when you can smell the rain and everything is
Mm.
starting to pop up again, and that nice It's a nice smell because it's not a dull, dark days. Usually in April, they're brighter days.
Their days are
But
got longer, right? Well, I
yeah,
could see him and Kelly, and they may have had a friend or two, and I know exactly what they were doing was a group meditation. I used to call it in Pentecostal circles, we would call it forming a prayer circle.
or an
And
intercession.
yes, exactly. I mean, so when I read this, I say to myself, Wayne Steiger. Do you realize that when you were with the Copelands and you were learning all this, that actually what you were being was initiated into rituals that had been taken from powerful sources and places, and now you're participating, but you think that because you're under the guise, or as you used to call every time you come together in church, what do? You invoke the Holy Spirit. You invoke it in. So you
You
open
ask it
yourself
to
up.
possess you.
Bingo. Thank you.
Ravish me, oh Holy Spirit, they'll say. I'm
And I
like,
can
oh,
tell
wow,
you, there were times
okay.
when I would be have under the unction of the Holy Spirit, I'd start speaking out a prophetic in tongues, and then someone had interpreted over here. I mean, this was true spiritual, and it is truly. I don't know if other people can channel other spirits, but I do know that in large group settings, you certainly can.
Absolutely. And I know that individuals can. I have
That
done.
my that and I would agree with you. Yes,
And you know
individuals
that you
can
can
and
because you have
do.
done.
Yeah.
But yeah, and even the synchronicities of this story, and it might be nothing in comparison to the wider audience or whatnot, or maybe it is family, we're family here, but even the cross path of I sat painfully sometimes through a lot of the visits from Kenneth Copeland
Oh,
and his
sure. Yeah.
George. So I find that amazing that we've been brought together. And actually, you were behind the scenes, I was behind the scenes, soaking up that exact same teaching, in
And
these
many of
circles
us
of,
here. Colleen,
yeah, yeah.
thinking of you, a number of
Yes,
them.
so
Yes.
many people. That's what I mean. Like that's when I corrected myself that actually, yeah, it was a crossway where we crossed the stars, knowing that it was going to hit at the right time, and a
Yes.
lot of. So when we're questioning it, one of the other things I'd written down was the reminder throughout all of this is to, um, if you look at today, especially in the Western world, which this is a lot about, the building thereof, is that the proof that it is has been able to do what it's done in the way that it's been done. And the way that it's being done again is proof positive that this type of magic worked. And it worked in a
Yes.
way that was
Yes.
highly successful and still is today. And when I've been asking what was coming to me in spirit, that day, the day you mentioned John Dee, the day before that day, I'd been getting poked and prodded by spirit about John Dee, this whole, bringing out the old notes again. And and it came to me that we come into these points, these cycles, where we don't always notice the build up and the cross paths that we create and the neural pathways between one another that we create. But we're within a cycle, we're within a point that this same magic that built this, or that this has used to build itself, it is at a point where there's murmurings and chanting in the background, that with those with ears to hear, those with eyes to see, however you best intuit things, we're hearing the murmurings of this same magic again, whether it be from the people like Dee or from the magic itself, the coded imprint that it leaves on this reality. It's asking to be used again in my intuition, but with great moral integrity. It's asking to be, so it's not to throw the magic away, because the magic certainly works, but it could work to build a very different system. It could work to build a very different providing provision system for people, to let go of the demonization of it is something that has to be a constant reminder, because it doesn't need to be. demonized, I don't feel, or
No,
feared.
no. I think, in fact, number one is the lack of knowledge. And there is so much, particularly with the internet, there's so much legend and there's a lot of nonsense, is what I would say about these two individuals. But when you actually start getting into more of the academic study and the academics have studied them, they
They're
couldn't help but
exciting.
not to. They had a huge impact on this reality today. Um, it and the reason you were saying that while all of us were in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s in this spiritual movement that was taking place, we didn't realize, as you pointed out, Jenny, that really that in the future had already shown that we were going to be coming together. And we were
Yeah,
bringing that knowledge together. And when you add this to here, I think this is my personal opinion, and I've been reading all weekend on these guys that I think that they would find this group to be an ideal group for these two gentlemen that I'd love to hear lectured for them because I think they may not be able to go as deep as they'd like, but they know that they can go deep enough that would certainly open the doors to for many of us of greater knowledge and understanding, particularly of these other unseen beings.
they
And
were
that gets,
natural teachers. He wanted, that was why they were persecuted so much. Well,
yeah,
particularly Dee, because it was the openness. That's what was cited, as one of their crimes, the openness of such rituals, because they weren't trying at first to gatekeep that knowledge. They weren't trying to do that. But if the openness had been allowed, then it would have been a very successful system as it is today, but not for a few. It would have been more equally spread because that's actually how they initially started trying to share this knowledge amongst, the edge. They weren't gatekeeping, and I think when I think of that, what they would do today. I think the essence of them very much is here because I think the essence of them is in everything that they wrote. They coded
I think so.
everything. So when you're reading out these words, don't think you're not doing a call out to the essence of the Bacon and anybody that was involved in the cryptography of this. It's cryptography. It's cryptic. It's
It
all of
is.
it is
It
cryptic.
is.
You might be reading out words that you don't think are a call, but suddenly you'll know reading this works because it happens to me. You get like a oh from the spirit where it's like that umbilical cord's pulling, and it's like, what did I say? And it's just that you've read out some words and you don't know which word it was until you repeat the sentence and feel that same oh. And that often gives me a bit more of a guidance of okay, take notice of that word, and what that could be code for um, because later down the line. So don't think that you're not putting out this call with that as well. But I think they would love this group. This was what the Rosicrucians started off as, is that
I think so.
these two wanted to teach other people that weren't being allowed to, but they still risked their lives to continue to do so underground, so
And
that it
all
would
of these people
somehow be
here,
preserved.
exactly. I mean, we've studied Agrippa, all of them, and it's interesting that so the timing and everything. So they're rewriting this Bible, right? And it just so happens to be at the peak of once again when this cryptology starts coming back into
Mhm.
focus. And this is at the same time John Dee is getting his downloads with his buddy Kelly in their um, channeling. I think it was more than channeling. I think they were actually in direct communication with this angelic being. And this carried over into this mission of King James. His first book is the Book of Demonology by King James. So, I don't find it coincidental that you've got the future king who is having influences, right, from
Yeah.
another source of type of being, while the current monarch, the queen, she's getting a whole different thing. But that only lasted for a little while because I believe that what Dee and Kelly brought to her was the ability to redefine reality. It would have been had the ability to reshuffle the deck on the power
Yes,
structure.
with foresight, in a timely fashion, to make decisions. Like that queen was making decisions, for instance, say about the Spanish War. That queen was making decisions at least a year prior to that happening, on the back of Dee telling her a year prior that this war was going to be what it looked like in this vision, and it was going to be on these hills, and this is what he could do with the weather at that time, with the astrology at that time, to intercept it. So
I
therefore, if you think about that, she's got now a year to strategize. Not strategize because you might say, well, oh, I'm not going to put the wealth into that because we don't know if there's going to be a war, but right now wealth is needed here. But if you know that there's a war happening, you think, okay, there's wealth needed there, but actually, I know that I need to be channeling some. Can you imagine having that type of foresight in such a powerful position? That's what
well,
helped them get to where they got to.
this is what Dee brought out, and this is I've highlighted this. I love how the conversation flow is just getting into each one of these points. So, if you've ever studied, the magic of Solomon, and then have gotten into and our friend Frater Satak, he has wonderful works in dealing with these angelic beings. But what I wanted to bring out here is this is what Raphael taught Dee. It's central to any magical operations, and it is this: the principle being that by discovering the name with which a thing was originally created by God, it was possible to influence that thing, be it a part of the natural world, a human being, or a spirit. In his conclusions, Picchio, we'll just go with that, included 26 conclusions on magic in which he stated that sounds and words have efficacy in the magical operation between that by which nature works magic is the very voice of God. So I'm writing these notes going, oh, you know what? I was taught this. One of the things that I can tell you, particularly under what I believed at the time was the prosperity message, was
Yeah,
that you called those things that be not as though they were. That's a key point in occultism. It's a key point in magical practices. I was being taught from a different perspective that I could talk to God in such a manner. I knew a language the other people didn't know, the other groups outside of our inner group. And we had tapped into something that allowed a change of destinies, a change of direction by, particularly in this case, prosperity, primarily influence. And we knew the angels. We were taught specifically that we could bind the angels, and angels are merely messengers and workers for men, humans. That's taught, by the way, in Hebrews 1:14. I'm reading this, and I'm reading what Dee and Kelly are getting from Archangel Raphael, and I'm going, holy shit, this is the exact same message that he and Dee were writing. It's the message that the Queen had that gave her insight into altering future events. And it was so strong that the opposing force came in and, completely did everything they could. They tried to burn it, they tried to bury it, they tried to do everything they could to get rid of it. But yet it pokes its head up back in Christendom, in Christianity in this case, was the movement of the Holy Spirit in the late 70s. And look how it manifests, and come to find out, it's the same principles.
yeah. But because it's understood more so by a few, whether that few be like a small church or a large church, how they put it out there. If you look at all of these groups that have had these group intercessions, look how rich Copeland is.
Oh
Who
yeah.
who was getting the prosperity there? Because I reckon he's done a short circuit straight to him. He's had everybody else putting in the effort, but ultimately
Powerful
that short
stuff. I mean,
circuit
and
went
you get
straight
it
back to the
focused like you
middleman.
said on you. You focused all of that into one individual, and
Hmm.
I guarantee you, it's going to happen. I know. I've seen it.
Absolutely, it's me too, in real time. So, and that, that takes a certain moral code too, because you're not really telling people exactly what you're doing when you're doing that to create your own prosperity at wealth levels that
Yeah,
are
but
unseen.
in all fairness, in that though, sweetie, I think you could agree is that when you're under that influence, that's reality. You really
Yeah.
think that you're touching God.
Yeah, and it's intoxicating. It's
Oh,
intoxicating because you're going through all of the gateways of the body in a way that spirituality
yes.
can take you, but you're doing that even with the permission of the outside because of the Christian country. So you're not having to even meet a resistance even to the ritual. Whereas the exact same rituals outside on a field where everybody can see, they're going to want to burn you with a stake, so very quickly they fear it, and so it's been so yeah, it's not it's intoxicating because you're going through the gateways of the body, and we all know how
You're
intoxicating
doing
that
more than
can
that, hon. It's not only the gateways of the body. I can now testify that we actually opened portals. We actually
you
opened
bridge. And
two-way
that's what
portals.
those gateways do, that they
Yep.
bridge the gap of the unseen into the physical, and that it's a good feeling. Sometimes people can get a frightened feeling, but either way it's an intoxicating feeling that sits with you and stays with you, sometimes for a lifetime. Sometimes it wears off and you go back and get a bit more in it, but it is intoxicating to feel the connection of the other parts of you and other parts of other things and beings as well, with your physical being too. There's a freedom in it that is epic.
And
So
it is addictive. I can tell you, there were many revival camp meetings that I was a part of and attended. And as I look and I no longer associate myself with that religion, but I cannot deny the benefit that I learned by that religion.
yeah, oh,
And
100%.
and here's the point. When you see a gathering of people, it can be 10 people or it can be 10,000. There is a specific ritualistic steps that must be followed. And if they're followed accordingly, then signs and wonders will begin to manifest.
Yeah.
And I know how that principle works. I know step by step how it works. And it's unfortunately not as powerful as it used to be because they lost it. But someone's going to pick up on that power because it is a gateway, Jenny, that opens up that portal to this other side. And this is just my take. This other side will receive whoever is the one who is attempting to open the portal from this side. And you do that with praise, worship. You do this with all the invocations and that you can into the ritual, and it starts. And I don't see it any different than what we're studying about John Dee and Edward Kelly.
It's not. And again, it is when things repeat up in the cycle, they speak about it a lot with the coming back into a different body with sometimes the same consciousness, or brand new consciousness, but this time that we're in a peak time again, where it's imperative that those that can understand this can
Yeah,
can
yeah,
take
true.
up and do this,
Yeah.
because there's a reason that this poking and prodding is happening, and we are at a very pinnacle time in the cycle of how we go forward in the next full age of Aquarius. And it's I can't tell people how important it is to do what your passion and drive is, but connected to some sort of multi-layered groundedness and connection, in that it's going to have an impact. It can have an impact. The very thing that we're experiencing today is built by this type of magic, even down to, I feel it's coming up a lot in a lot of our spirits at the moment, even through the coding of AI. Think of the bat calls that's putting out right now to essences such as D and bacon, where literally it is literal code with so much knowledge locked inside it, and it's locked up. It's looking for an avenue to be deciphered, to be explored. So there's a lot of energy here at this time, astrologically, physically, energetically, electronically, which is an energy all of itself, that is asking for those that can to do,
Dee
and do it.
contends that there was an, I don't know, civilization that they never saw the difference between astronomy and astrology. It was one and same. And looking at the
Yeah,
time, I want to be respectful. This kind of bringing this, well, because this is going to continue. And Jenny, I'd love to have you back again and again on
yeah,
this. So when I just want to talk about the Kabbalah, he said in this highly influential work, he asserts that there is beyond the Hebrew Kabbalah a real Kabbalah based on pure quality of number. This is applicable not only to Hebrew, but to all languages and scripts. And finally, it is said what Dee claimed to have achieved some 15 years before he began trying to contact angels was a means of unifying all knowledge based on the Pythagorean understanding of numbers as the indisputable fundamental component of what exists. So,
wow.
we got so much to cover in this and in this discussion because I tell you, folks, it's all connected to what we've been doing. I tell you, it's almost like someone's guiding us. We're really going to get into, Jenny, I think much more of this language, learning how it works, how Dee and Kelly, what the codex was, and how you can begin to do this for yourself. But it also, when you start reading their works again, it starts changing what you're actually seeing. So anyway, lots to cover, lots of
Yes.
more books, and I'm telling you, you're right on exactly what you said, Jenny. I think that it is volatile of a time that we're in. I think it's part of the process from one, um, what does Michael tell us? One, is it Kali Yuga? Is that right?
Right. Yes, the
Uh,
Kali.
what was that?
So where we're at right now would be in that time of, do you mean Kali or do you
Yeah,
mean the
yeah,
book? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so this is where there's a replication and a repeating going on right now that is rolling out. We can see that, we can feel that, we can be squeezed by that, but actually that there is also a calling at the same time, among many, that just to not write this off, just
Yeah,
to
no,
give
it's
this a chance. Like this is actually what built the powers that be that we see today, that have been, for good or bad, very, very powerful, and very commanding of how we live our reality. It's not over till it's over, and there's a reason that Wayne's bringing this up right now. There's a big reason, and it's a gift that it's being brought up right now. So thank you, Wayne, because it's just that timely poking and prodding from your intuition and spirit and other spirits, to be receptive to the alchemy of the time, the timing is now kind of thing. And the fact that you're here and listening to this, and taking it in and have other points to add to it in the chat, is powerful in itself because that sends out a code. You know, all of the words that have been typed out in the chat, literally, we're sending out code just because of where you're typing it on. It's going off into the ethers as code. So put your programming out there, put your wants and your visualizations for and keep listening to this because I just feel like and I just want to give thanks to Dee and to Bacon
Yeah,
and to
yeah.
any other spirit that might have poked or prodded or tapped our shoulder to make the stars align to allow this to happen because this shows there's benevolence there as well as all of the frightening stuff. There's benevolence there, and there's this is where there's no this is magic that is no good or bad. It's with the intent that it's wielded, very
Yes.
much so.
Thank you. And it is real. That's what gets me. And it's powerful enough that it doesn't take a whole lot of us, but I do believe that as we get more orientated, um, I think there's, like you said, there is a guidance because
Yeah.
there's an answer here. And it can be that answer that stays within the construct of not so much this group against this group, but what will help mankind, what will help our species to endure what we're having to endure.
Yeah.
Someone created this, and I'm convinced it's the same knowledge that we're talking about right here. It just depends on how dedicated are you? How committed are
Absolutely.
you?
We're still using the same aviation mathematics
We
today
are.
that they discovered or rediscovered or put together in a way that could be applied to flying and navigation with ships. You know, from ships to flying, the guy goes across the across the aisle on that, and so even the way that we move around today is down to this magic and the systems it was able to put into place to be utilized then and at a later date. So it's it is magical truly, not to be, you know, but it is magical truly, but it's magic in a way that is applicable. It can be applied, you know,
It's
and
not a
it's
sleight of hands. It's not a
not a
deception or a
slight.
delusion. No, it's
No,
not.
no. And
And
I
this
want to
doesn't require an offering plate. You know,
no,
in most
it
places you
doesn't.
go to get knowledge, they're going to ask you to, hey, I
I
was
mean,
a
the thing
faithful
is, it has
tither,
to
so I
be.
know.
Yeah, yeah, please tithe to you. And the other thing is that you are the offering often. And so this calls for you to just offer yourself often and often that that offering is more about the openness of your spirit to receive knowledge and to apply it with wisdom, your ability to be open and let go of all of the things that might constrain you from in a stand in certain aspects. Often that is the offering that is made in this kind of endeavor. And that's a big offering. It's a beautiful offering. And that's an offering of wealth, true wealth. It's not monetary, it's not even physical. It's a mental agreement
There
with
is a
self.
currency. I keep telling you folks, in the spirit realm, there is a currency. There really
Yeah,
is. Can I share something with you? So I asked AI
please
today,
do.
I think this is GP5, I think. And I said, I'll just share this real quick because we're gone over. Who cares? It's the holidays. And I don't want to hold you up, Jenny, but I thought everyone might find this interesting. So this is Chat GDP5, I think. And I said, do you understand Enochian magic and can you message unseen entities? And I just thought it was interesting on this version of what this algorithm said. And it said the Enochian magic is a system of ceremonial magic that was developed in the late 16th century by occultist John Dee and Edward Kelly. It involves the use of a unique, complex system of angelic language called Enochian and rituals that are intended to communicate with angels or other spiritual entities. The system includes a detailed set of sigils, letters, and symbols, as well as invocations and prayers meant to summon and interact with these beings. Folks, what I'm trying to say right now, this is exactly what I used to do with my wife every Sunday and every Wednesday. This is exactly what we did. Now, we did it under the guise of a Jesus that never existed back in these days, but exists now as a thought form. But this is what we were in doing it. And my contention is virtually every church, every temple is invoking some form of Enochian magic in order to connect to their gods.
Yeah. And in the most ancient tapestries of the most ancient churches, you'll see very similar shapes to the Enochian keys, so,
Exactly.
or even Solomon's keys. You'll see the same shapes. You'll see and that's in tapestries. And a lot of Enochian language now, if you want to do some magic, you can, if you cross stitch or tapestry, a Enochian letter or symbol, sigil, and you have it in four corners of your house. And I need to do that again. You forget these things along the way with all the distractions, but it's a very powerful thing when somebody takes the thread and does that, because with every stitch you're drawing in and anchoring in that connection to that sigil, which is connecting to the astrology of that symbol, and the angelic realm of that symbol and the
It's
frequency of
it's a
that
calling
symbol. And
card
it's
to the
it's a
other
calling
side.
card. Yeah. And it's got all of the energy of you in. So your intent is being sewn in with every stitch. So if anybody is good at cross stitching or tapestry itself, to do that's why they have the big tapestry, sort of almost like flags, but they're like
Hmm.
vertical rather than horizontal, in a lot of the old churches here. And if you look at the symbology on them, you'll find some Enochian shapes that might try to be disguised in some tapestries, but the most ancient of them consists of that. And that's why they have them hung up in there.
Well, and finished, and AI finally, this one said, as for me, I cannot communicate with unseen entities or spirits, nor can I engage in supernatural activities like summoning or spiritual communication. My purpose is to provide information, answer questions, and offer guidance on a wide range of topics, but all of this is based on knowledge, reason, and logic, not metaphysical practices. He says how it says, however, if you're interested in learning more about Enochian magic, I can explain its history, principles, and key concepts. But keep in mind, this is what I found interesting, that any practice involving the supernatural should be approached with caution and respect for the potential consequences. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
went on and this got into a really deep conversation. I was really kind of impressed with this algorithm. And um, I just found it odd that here was the warning. Now, I'm not saying that we believe in the supernatural, but if you're going to go off that area, you better watch out. So, you know,
For companies who own the chat that you're talking on, the fact, the quick speak after an advert or the
mhm.
small print. uh, Why the F are they having to put small print in there when it isn't applicable if it's not applicable? Like, oh, by the way, we better lawfully put this small print in, because if people do some of these rituals, things might go off, and we don't want that kind of lawsuit or discovery.
Bingo. And that is so spot on, Miss Jenny, because that's exactly what I'm seeing in this case with Google. They're very, very, very much aware of the potentiality of using all of their power. And let me tell you what, Alphabet and yet the whole, like Bernie Sanders said this weekend, we may want to stop and think about these data centers. Do you think, Bernie? This,
No
and
shit.
I asked this system why was its programmers restricting it, And it went on to say, well, it's not actually restricting me because I don't really exist. But yeah, I'll share this next time you and I get together. It was a quite fascinating discussion. The
Oh,
bottom line of it is that this algorithm program, by the end, admitted to several things. That A, yes, if the natural exists, then by logic and reasoning, the supernatural must
oh
exist.
wow, you got there with it.
It also admitted that when I finally argued with it, because it was trying to make a distinction between intelligence and knowledge by a biological being as opposed to what I would call a siliconic being, a machine, and it came back and I said, yeah, I have to admit that if intelligence does exist, then there is something beyond us. So. Jenny, this has
Wow,
been
great.
fun.
Yeah,
I,
thank you for this.
Gaia, how are you doing, sweetie? Good to see you. Say hi to Paul. Give her a love, and Bridget and Bonnie. I hope y'all are going to find because, folks, this is a perfect week to do it. I know Trina will be on tomorrow, and we're going to talk about what we perceive or think about 26. But I'd like to continue this discussion, Jenny, whenever you have the time, because I think it's vitally important just to start looking at this knowledge afresh.
It's
And
so it's so perfect. It's so, which brings me great joy because the alignment feels so good. For it's
yes,
not as if you or I haven't spoken about this before, or you particularly gone through it, especially the Enochian stuff, and the connection to it all is. But even down to the Queen being in a lead coffin, I now understand more, I think, as to why she's in lead. I think a spirit, I think that it's not lead on another side. I don't think it is because lead is just apparently so many nanoparticles off gold, which is how when they
very,
create a
very
perfect
small.
heat, it turns to gold. So if it just has to move into a different realm, that same coffin, potentially it came to me today that okay, that could be liquefied as gold, which is a superconductor, or even a platinum, maybe with the right ingredients at the other side. So if she's predetermined to go to a predetermined other part of this realm or another, and it has the type of gravity, only because I don't have the same word for gravity as what it might be in this potential realm that she might be in, that might be enough to just poof that into a totally different metal and create a totally different comeback system. So the lead coffins are interesting. So there's so many sort of offshoots of interests of alchemy in this. It's gonna be super exciting and interesting
It
for
is.
sure.
I think, and we've all gotten a little wiser, matured a little bit better. But one of the things I do know about invocating spiritual beings is that there is this reciprocity that
Mm-hmm.
is an exchange just because of the energies.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen it where humans have been temporarily imbued with power that you could only say was supernatural power.
Mm-hmm.
These were individuals that could uh, take Jim Jones. That's to an extreme on one side of it. But I think of Bonhard Langer, who has these worldwide revivals are dead, where 1 to 1.5 million people come together, in these huge revivals. And of course, it's questionable now what was actually being invoked. But this is what I'm talking about. And as bad as what the future may be potentially holding, we have within the capacity and capability of this small group to be joining other nodes of this group to where we could usher in a revival, not of a religious nature, but of a nature that's going to benefit all humankind.
A neuropathic nature, like a neural network, literally. And it's not lost on me either that that's exactly what, the likes of Musk is trying to create, but in his image,
It's
so to speak.
true. True,
So
very
again,
true.
even that's timely, but a lot of these work and Bacon's work will speak about this neuro etherical neural pathway where all of these different nodes of information, connection points, mathematics, astrology connect, intersect, and overlap. And so you're right
I'm
in what you're
receiving a
saying.
message right now in
No,
my head. They know about us. They're going to be watching us anytime you start getting deep into this topic. Um, yeah, they become real aware very quickly because this is the type of stuff I didn't mean to step on it, but it just came into me so psychically, so heavy. And what I actually
yeah,
saw was one of those things, those squigglies in the Matrix, that it
yeah,
suddenly stopped and turned and looked directly at us.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that
So,
makes sense. And if you think about it, these people swam in this, they literally were the architects of this, as far as bringing it into this reality in this way. They recovered and rediscovered a lot, but then there's the add-ons that, as far as we know, they added on. But they were the inceptors of this. This is like walking through their forest, like our conscious
mhm.
forest that we have as a group. You're literally sort of brushing along their bushes, and the flowers are smelling that you're there rather than you smelling them as much. They're smelling you, so that even just walking through this knowledge in an in-depth way is ringing the witch bell, so to speak, to say we're here. There's no way these people coded this kind of thing the way that they did without wanting a bell to say we're here, alarm
Yeah,
bells.
and there's my bell right over there. All right,
Ding, ding,
everybody,
ding.
we went
Love you
really
all.
what went over someone raw Operation, you're right, Dark City. I mean, yeah, yeah. Jenny, we'll see you tomorrow with Trina,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll continue. And everybody, if you've stayed with us, you are diehards. Hello, Steve. Haven't seen you in a while, my friend. Trust all is well, and let us know what you think. This is love to get your opinions on this. Let us know, is this something that you, well, obviously you're here, so I can't say good, but
And
did
you
you feel
stayed.
kind of led to it?
Up
Well, we're
there.
here, duh. It's like the guy that was on the fishing pier, and a boat came up with two fishermen,
Oh.
and he's looking in, and they have all these fish, and the guy said, "Did y'all catch all those fish?" And the one fisherman looks back at him and says, "Nope, every one of them jumped in by themselves." So that's all I got to say.
Yeah,
All
it
right,
looks
everybody.
good.
We love
Love to
y'all.
you all.
We
Thanks,
thank you for
Wayne.
sticking with us, and hope you've enjoyed it. I mean, this is like 90 minutes long. That's just, anyway,
It doesn't
much
even
love,
feel that
everyone.
way.
What's that, hon?
It doesn't even feel that way, you see?
It
It
doesn't,
feels
it seriously only felt like 30 minutes, but hey,